Make some notes, because in this great chapter 13 is the beast rising out of the sea that has 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns upon his head, blasphemous names against God on his head. One head gets wounded, but out of a miracle somehow it gets healed, and the whole world is in awe about it. And another beast comes out of the sea, and this beast wants everyone to worship and commands that everyone on the earth worships the first beast. You've got to understand, this is during that awesome period called the tribulation that's going to come on this earth, maybe not too long from now. And this other beast comes up out of the earth, and he has 2 horns, and he has a voice like a dragon. He supports the first beast. He calls fire down out of heaven, and he deceives the peoples of the world with miracles. Watch out, folks, for supposed miracles, even today. And then he commands that an image be built. Well, Brother Foster, you tell us about this image that's going to be built and put up.
Well, as a charismatic, it's hard to say what the image might be, but if he fits the character of the first beast, that is, if he's like a leopard, but he's a man, that means he could be half man, half animal, or cat, and in Egypt they already have an image of the beast. It's called the Sphinx. Sphinx, yes. And of course the German army had to shoot the nose off of it.
Is that how that happened?
That's how that happened.
I did not know. Are you sure of that?
Yes, I'm positive.
When we see the picture of the Sphinx in the desert in Egypt,
yes,
the Germans with a tank?
Yes, with a tank.
Shot the nose off.
Yeah, that's why
I'm going to have to remember that. I mean, that's not prophecy, but that's interesting to me.
So what's going to happen is they're going to build another image of the beast, and it could be just like the Sphinx over there. Yeah. Could be. Some have supposed that it's going to be a computer-generized image, and that they'll have virtual reality where they'll project it right out into the room.
Like a hologram, you mean?
Yes. Well, that's possible, but I don't think that's the one, because they're going to build this image. It's not going to be...
But this second beast out there commands the whole world to worship this thing, doesn't it?
Yes. The second beast commands everyone to worship the dragon, Revelation chapter 13. Commands everyone to worship the first beast, Revelation chapter 13. And then after the image is built, and he makes the image speak...
Come to life, it says.
Yes. Then he will make everyone worship the image also. So there's like 3 objects to worship. None of them are the real true God.
Of course, the devil wants to be worshipped. That's the one.
Yes, he does.
All this.
Yes. Yeah. Since the beginning, he wants to be worshipped.
You can see that.
Now, the second beast is a charismatic.
Okay, let's stop a minute for our folks, since we haven't been on here a while, and let's tell people where we are in time.
All right.
For our viewers, when is this going to happen? What period of time are we in?
Okay. In a timeline, let's suppose that right now we are in 1998.
Okay.
And in a timeline, in the past, Christ died, buried, rose again, ascended into heaven. We are in right now the church age, also called what Paul called the dispensation of the age of grace.
The grace of God.
Yes. And then this ends with a rapture of the church age saints going up.
That hasn't happened yet.
No, that hasn't happened yet.
They were prior to the rapture of the calling out of God's people from the earth instantly.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where we are presently.
Okay.
But the incident that happens here happens after that.
So it could be... Beginnings could already be in place, but the rapture has to occur first.
The rapture takes place first.
So let's suppose we're 3-4 years away from it, at least. If the rapture happened today, wouldn't we be about 3 or 4 years from this?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in the timeline of which I'm speaking, right after the rapture, there's World War III. And according to Isaiah chapter 34, it takes place in the land of Edom, where Mount Seir is, where Persia comes up against Jerusalem. And what's Persia today is Iraq and Iran. So I've been saying for 20 years that Iraq and Iran, both Muslims, are going to join forces and come up against Jerusalem, and the Western world is going to come against them, and this Western world will be headed by the little horn in Daniel. He will be then an exalted horn when he defeats the terrorist, the world terrorist that everybody hates. So he will become the world leader automatically by that. Now, after that happens, he makes peace and brings in peace all over the world for about 3.5 years. And then he also makes a covenant with Israel for a 7-year period. Now, in the midst of the 7-year period, which is also a 7-year tribulation period, right in the middle of that, there is a the Jews have been building a temple, and they're about to have their grand opening, and they're about to offer up the red heifer.
Now, this is the temple we read about in the news some.
Yes, they want to build it there.
They want to build it, and they're concerned about the Temple Mount.
According to Revelation chapter 11, they will not build it until after the rapture because it's built during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Then, after 3.5 years of building, they're going to have their grand opening. Of course, they invite the world's greatest dignitary.
Oh, yeah.
He walks into the services, proclaims himself to be God, offers up a sacrifice
You're talking about
on
Antichrist.
the altar, the Antichrist,
Okay.
the first beast,
Okay.
offers up an offering on the altar that makes it desolate of God's blessing. That's why it's called the desolation of abomination of desolation.
But
Makes it desolate of God's blessings forever. And sets up an idol there, perhaps of himself.
In other words, he desecrates it and
Yes.
totally becomes enemy
Yes.
of the Jew from then on.
Yes. And then we go into the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period, which is really called the Great Tribulation, because things, let's say that hell really breaks loose then. Things really get hot on this earth. The sun goes...
Well, I'll tell you, it's been pretty rough up to this place
Yes.
with all of the grass burning and,
Right.
and the
Now-
seas turned to blood.
Yes. Right after this incident happens, the second beast comes on the scene and makes the image of the beast, and then causes everyone on the earth, small and great, rich and poor, to receive a mark either in their forehead or in their hand. And this mark might be a number, according to Revelation
Now, for those
13,
studying, that's chapter 13, verse 16.
verse
Go ahead.
16.
Go ahead.
He has a mark, he has a name, and he has a number. Now notice that they're not all just one, but there are 3 different things mentioned there. Receive the name, or the mark, or the number of his name. Now, a person who carefully reads the Bible will see these things. Someone has supposed that 666 is his name, or 666 is his number, and that's his mark. But that's not according to what the Bible says, because the Bible says that he has a mark, he has a name, and he has a number, and you must receive one of them on your right hand or on your forehead.
Yeah, well, everybody's familiar that his number is 60.
Yes, of course, and that's what the
A lot
Bible
of people
says.
call that the mark, but that's not the mark, is it?
No,
Probably.
it could be.
Yeah.
But see, we don't know what the mark is. I'm supposing
Now,
it's-
let me see it so everybody can get this. He is going to cause everybody in the world, Christians won't be here.
Oh, no, we're gone.
We're gone the rapture. But he's going to, by law, edict, since he's dictator of the world now, cause everybody in the world, order them to take either the number or the name or the mark of this beast
Yes,
in their forehead or in their hand.
yes.
Maybe a computer chip.
Well, I'm sure they're already experimenting with things like this. I have heard that they're already doing this to animals so that you can find your animals, and they may already be doing it with children, babies when they're born. They have
Yeah,
a chip now that's so small it can go through a number 10 hypodermic needle, and in that chip contains
Everything about it.
1 million megabytes.
Or, you know, they may just surprise and have an actual mark or an actual number. Now, without this number,
You can't buy, you can't sell, you can't eat, you can't feed your baby if you have one, unless you have an outside source that brings you food. Say, unless you can, there's somewhere where you can scrounge around and get food. And if you do receive the mark, according to Revelation, the book of Revelation, if you do receive the mark, you are automatically condemning yourself. You are calling God a liar, you're disallowing the Bible to have any effect on
so
you.
you mean if you take the mark, God's your enemy. If you don't take it, the Antichrist your enemy.
Yes.
Boy,
And I just discovered some...
I've heard of being between a rock and a hard place, but that's an exaggeration of it. And so you can't go get groceries, you can't rent.
No.
So it is the identifying mark. I guess just like in any society, like when Hitler, he had certain credentials people had to have to do anything. If you didn't have it, you didn't have the proper papers, in other words. It's kind of like an electronic paper. So
He was the first man that I know of who started marking other people. You know, he caused the Jews to receive a mark.
yeah, they wore the Star of David. They had to.
Yes.
Now,
They
did they
called
have
it
a
the
mark
Star
on
of
their
David.
body too? Was it
It
any
was
kind of a...
It was a hexagram that he put a hex on him. He was using witchcraft on him. They called it the Star of David. He didn't.
Oh, I didn't know it. Well, it was the Star of David to them.
Oh, yeah.
It looked just like the Star of
So
David.
they reversed it and
But
said,
to
oh,
him-
it's a star.
Well,
We'll
that's
call
just
it-
like the swastika, the broken cross that he used, which could look like a cross, but it wasn't.
Yes.
Now, this beast, this whatever he is, I
The
mean,
second
everybody.
beast is very charismatic. I mean, you talk about a politician who could tell a lie
Let's
and get away
define
with it.
charismatic, because today people think of charismatics as some church.
Well, charismatic
means gifted.
Yes, means
Yeah,
having the gift of gab.
A
my mother used to
charismatic
say.
man, a man with charisma, we would say
Yes,
better.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so he has.
Do you
this-
think he's a human being?
Yes, I do.
You think he's alive now?
I would not be surprised. That's kind of reaching out. I
Yeah.
think he's probably. I don't see how this earth.
We have folks watching that feel like they know for sure these things.
I know. I don't see how this United States or the rest of this world can go another 10 years without God coming back. So yes, he could be born right now. He could be a teenager right now. He could be in some mother's arms right
Or
now.
he could just
being
come
nursed.
out of anywhere and appear.
My wife and I
I mean,
were
if it's the
talking
devil.
about this today. To hear some woman right now is nursing the Antichrist, who will be the devil incarnate.
Or maybe he's already existing and he's just going to appear.
It's an awesome thing.
That's
Yes.
a possibility too, you know.
Yes.
Because if the devil is behind all this, and
Yes.
and he's the power behind every beast, and he wants to be worshipped, and he's the enemy of God, and he could have the man prepared.
Well, there is an interesting verse on this subject in Revelation chapter 17, verse 8,
Okay.
talking about the Antichrist. That is the first beast. It says, "The beast that thou sawest was." That means he was on this earth before. And is not. John says, write down, he is not right now, when John's
Okay,
writing.
he used to be here, but he's not here now. All right,
And
when that
shall
John was
ascend,
writing.
yes, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. Now they beheld this beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Okay, he was on this earth at one time. He was a man who walked on this earth at one time. When John's writing this, he's not here now. He's gone into perdition. And there's only one person I know who's gone into perdition. The Bible says Judas Iscariot
was the son of it.
son of perdition. Okay.
Wow,
He went to his own place. He didn't go to hell like a normal lost person.
No, I didn't hear that until about 10 years ago. And I think Dr. Ruckman is a proponent of Judas being the Antichrist. And
Yes, he
the
is.
argument is super strong.
I've heard of Dr. Buckman.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
At any rate, yes. So this beast rises up out of the bottomless pit and goes in, perhaps, I think that the real beast dies. His deadly wound is healed. And the beast that comes up out of the bottomless pit enters into the dead body, and it comes back to life because it says his deadly wound was healed.
This is scary. I mean,
This is a movie
unbelievable.
picture out of Hollywood, a horror film.
I don't think they could do it this well.
Probably
This
not.
is something, but it will come to pass for sure, and it may not be long. Do you see any significance in 666? Why not 665, 832, 1000,
Okay.
X plus 5? Is there any
Perhaps-
reason in the Bible we can see why God or the beast would have chosen 666?
Perhaps in this manner. 6 is the number of man.
That
7 is the
oh,
number.
he said that. It's the number of a man.
Yes,
So that
is
makes
the-
sense.
7 is the number for perfection. 3 is the number for the Godhead, the Trinity. Okay. Man falls short of perfection by 1. And that's his righteousness.
Yeah, it's the Savior.
You see,
You know what? Let me tell you something. I was in Israel, 1984. I bought a shirt in the bazaar, one of the bazaars at Jerusalem. Got it home, or got it to the hotel, and looked at it, and in the label,
Yes?
666. That's all it had, those 3 numbers. No, I don't know why or anything. This is 10, 12 years ago.
Well,
14 years ago.
You didn't investigate.
Let me tell you something. No, didn't. I didn't know where to
You
investigate.
still have the shirt.
No, are you kidding? Another thing, every cab in the city of Jerusalem had 666 on its license tag. This was 14 years ago. Now, I saw this with my eyes. I didn't read this in the book. This didn't come out of somebody's theory. I saw this with my own eyes when I was in Israel in 1984.
I don't think it was their idea to put it on there.
But that was the reserve number for cabs.
Sure.
Whether it is now or not, I don't know. Now,
Interesting.
If you are watching us and that's not so, please call me and tell me, because my eyes saw it. And if it's changed, I'd like to know. There are people watching, you've probably been there recently. But I'd like to know why those numbers showed up there. All right.
All right.
That's 13. Go ahead.
One more thing about this beast. I'd like to read something from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And it says this in verse 3, "Let no man deceive you by any means. For that day," that is the day of Christ, "for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition."
Yeah, again.
So the man of sin, the Antichrist, is the son of perdition. And Judas Iscariot is called the son of perdition. So without a doubt in my mind, Judas Iscariot raises from the dead. At least his spirit does. And enters into the body of this
If that's
man.
the case, then you would not believe that anybody's holding a little baby then today.
Oh, yes.
You believe his spirit would be in the body of a person? You know?
What I'm saying is, the person who's alive today will become this charismatic person who can speak well and persuade the whole world to worship him, and then he will be killed somehow, and the spirit of Judas Iscariot will come up out of the bottomless pit and enter into his body, and he'll raise from the
When you
dead.
say spirit of Judas Iscariot, you use a vague term. You mean Judas Iscariot will enter into him.
Yes. He'll enter into
Because
the
people
dead
look
body.
at it, they think we're bodies with souls. We're really souls with bodies, see?
That's
we're
true.
people who have bodies.
Yes.
All right. All right, well, that's exciting, and it's interesting.
You won't get that on MTV.
Boy, and that's the truth. You won't get that anywhere. You won't get this in most churches.
That's true.
Most preachers are afraid to open the book of Revelation.
Isn't that a crime?
Yeah, and of course the Bibles they read out of have been so diluted and changed that they don't know what's going on. But I think you ought to read Revelation. Revelation is not hard to understand. It's hard to believe.
Yes, you're absolutely
It's
right.
just an amazing thing. All right, so nobody can buy, nobody can sell unless they take this mark, and there's probably going to be millions who don't take it and going to hide it. Now, in Matthew, Dr. Bob, when they talk about the Jews are supposed to flee, they're not supposed, if they're on the housetop, don't get anything out to run. Is that at this period of time?
Yes, you know, Matthew does not talk about the church age. Matthew does not talk about the rapture of the church. Matthew 24 and 25 all deal with the tribulation period and the Jews of the tribulation period.
Now, you just said something that 90% of Christians that don't go to Bible preaching churches do not know.
I know.
See, and so many of them get their information from Matthew to try to apply themselves when they shouldn't.
Here's what's happened. The pastors don't know.
Yeah.
The preachers don't know.
Now, that's a
So
Jewish book, isn't it?
So they run to a commentary
That's exactly
and read
right.
what somebody said 300 years ago who didn't have the light that we have today from this book. And then the people don't know, so they listen to a pastor who's telling them something that's 300 years outdated and haven't walked in the light that we've walked. Preachers don't know, and they don't go to the author of the book to find out.
I read today, the Bible is the only book you can buy that when you read it, the author is present. Isn't that good?
That's great. Now, in Matthew 24,
Okay.
we find these things. They come and ask Jesus, what shall be a sign of thy coming? And when shall these things be? In the end of the world. And Jesus answers them according to the questions that they ask. Now, in 24:15, he says this, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place.
Now, that's the desecration of the holy place by the Antichrist.
Yes.
Okay?
Whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let him that is in Judea flee in the mountains. This is in the 3.5-year mark. When the Antichrist does this, right afterwards, he's going to wage such a war on the Jews like the world has not seen. He's going to make Hitler's regime look like a Sunday school picnic. And the blood that's going to flow down the streets will fill the sewers. He's going to attempt to kill on the spot 10% of the Jews in Jerusalem at that time. 10% of the Jews in Jerusalem will, at that time, will be the 144,000
Witnesses.
witnesses.
We're coming up in the next
He
chapter.
sets out in the next chapter.
Where do you get the 10%?
What does the Old Testament say that the tithe is to God?
Well, it's 10%, but I don't see the
10%.
connection.
He's going to offer up 10% of
Okay.
his sacrifice will be the human sacrifice, which is what his God demands, as God demands the sacrifice to pay for the sin.
You know, the devil really wants to be God, doesn't he?
Well, he does. So
He wants worship.
he's going to cut off 144,000 heads. 10% of the Jews in Jerusalem. And all of this just came to me in this past week. I thought of Revelation chapter 7, where the 144,000 are sealed. These are Jews, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. They are not some religion that's in existence today.
No, not the Jehovah's false witnesses.
No, they're not Jehovah Witnesses, or false witnesses, like you said. These are 144,000 Jews, and they're men, they are males, virgins, so-called because they have not desecrated themselves with women.
That word's defiled, yeah. And
Defiled
and that's
themselves,
not meant to be a negative term.
Right. Now, these 144,000 are sealed with the seal of God in their foreheads in Revelation chapter 7. When we get to Revelation chapter 14...
This seal, you're not talking about this So God has a seal too.
Oh,
not
the devil's
number.
a copier,
Yeah,
isn't
that's
he?
right. He sure is. Yeah.
Yes. So the 144,000
Let
are
me break
sealed.
just a minute. I want to tell our producer we're going 3 extra minutes. That'll give us 5 more minutes,
Good.
Bob. Give us 3 extra minutes in this segment.
The 144,000 that are sealed in Revelation chapter 7, if you read it very carefully, they are sealed to protect them from the elements. Because if you read it, that's what they're being protected from.
Yeah.
From the fire,
That's right.
the wind,
Wood.
and the rain, and the storms that are going to be caused on this earth.
That's right.
They're protected from that, but they're not protected from the Antichrist. He wages war against them. We find this out in Revelation chapter 14 when we get there next week.
Well, let's introduce it somewhat, and then we'll pick it up next week.
Good.
Chapter 14, okay?
That's good.
So we've got the beast killing all these people,
Yes.
and in 14, John sees some other things. Go ahead and read the first verse.
Okay, Revelation chapter 14, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion. This is the Mount Zion that's in heaven. There are two, or there will be. The one in heaven is going to come down on earth. Wherever Jesus is king, that's Mount Zion. And with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. When I read that, I found out what the seal of God is. In Revelation chapter 7, we're not told. But in Revelation chapter 14, we're told what the seal is. It's the seal of the name of the God, the name of the Father, written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice of heaven saying, as the voice of many waters and the voice of great thunder, and I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps, and they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song, and yet we're given the words in a few minutes. No man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. They're not on earth anymore. We're in Revelation chapter 14, and they're in heaven now.
So they've been killed.
Absolutely. Right after this chapter 13, when he wages war against the Christians and the believers. So they go to heaven. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins, and these are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. Now the firstfruits is an interesting subject. If you want to study that, I'm going to hurry for just a minute because I know we're about done.
Yes, sir.
The firstfruits are found in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 23, where Paul is talking about the resurrection. He says, but every man in his own order. Christ, the firstfruits, afterwards, they that are Christ at his coming. So Christ and the firstfruits include all the church age, all the Old Testament saints, all the church age saints, and all the tribulation saints, because these are included in the firstfruits. These are tribulation saints, and they're included in the firstfruits unto God. And in their mouth was found no guile, verse 5, for they are without fault before the throne.
Let's try to end this segment on this thought of those qualified to be the witnesses. Because there's over 1 million people, I'm sure, in the world that think they're one of the 144,000 of God's chosen witnesses, because they come knock on my door and tell me so.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that the Bible witnesses. Now, I have never been to the Watchtower Church or the Kingdom Hall. We're going to have a guest soon who is converted from all that, and he's going to tell us about it. I've never been, but I understand that they do believe they're these witnesses. That there are 144,000 chosen special ones, because they use that figure with me often. But according to the Bible, for the people who were the 144,000 witnesses are first of all Jews. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
They were virgins, never have known a woman.
That's correct.
And they're all men.
That's correct.
All right. So, and now in chapter 14, they have been slaughtered.
Yes,
And they're up in heaven. Yeah, beheaded. Yeah. I understand beheading is going to be the capital punishment during the tribulation period.
Yes, now you've touched on something. These 144,000 cannot possibly be the 144,000 of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Everyone's heard the